So this is one of the coolest topics in the access control and identity management domain is biometrics. I started getting involved with biometrics about 15 years ago and was lucky enough to be part of the team for NASA to evaluate some biometric tools. So really got my uh, my sea legs on the biometrics components. So here on 745 in your book, you can identify somebody by analyzing unique personal attributes or behaviors, which is one of the most effective and accurate methods for identification. It's very sophisticated and means more expensive. How many of you guys are currently using biometrics? Probably not many of you. So we already talked a little bit about some of these things, and you've seen a couple of the questions that come up. But really, there is a bunch of great technology that's out there. And what I'm going to tell you is just a few of them here. On page 748 in the book, they talk about fingerprints, talk about palm scan, hand geometry, retinal scan, iris scan, signature dynamics, keystroke dynamics, voice print, facial scan, hand topography. My goodness. So let me ask you one question. You guys have heard me talking all throughout the week. If you heard me talking on the radio, would you know it's me? How? How would you know it's me? The sound of the voice. So I was on TV not too long ago doing something, and somebody the next day now over on the Arsenal, I was walking down the hall, and I hadn't seen her in a little while, and she made sure that I knew that she heard me on the TV. She said that she was getting ready in the morning, watching the morning news, and she heard the interview about the Madison City School Cyber Club and heard me talking. And she said, that voice sounds familiar. And immediately came in the other room, and my goofy looking face was on the TV giving an interview. And she was like, oh, I know that guy. I know that guy. Well, it turns out that we all have unique signatures, not only in voice recognition, but also with our fingerprints. You've heard it, it's like a snowflake. You only have one unique snowflake, right? Apparently there's no other ones ever that could be the same, which, I mean, you got to think that there's got to be one out there, right? Maybe we can ask Santa next time we see him, huh? But the uniqueness of a fingerprint can be correlated to the data that's collected based off of the ridges of the fingerprint. So it's kind of neat the way it works. And this will give us a pretty good idea of it. The reason why I say the voice is because a lot of times, especially now, there's software out there. You talk about Siri or Hello Google or Dragon software that doctors use all the time. Doctors use to dictate notes into the Dragon software. I know if I'm riding down the highway, I'll fire up Hello Google and just start typing emails. Because I use that, 30 minutes that I'm sitting in the car, go ahead and send some emails out, right? Instead of me texting, I can dictate it, and I mean, it's going to be 90% correct at least, right? Hopefully not too many bad words in there. But, I think you probably get the point. So there's a bunch of different movies that have been out there, and I'm going to reference them in here because we all like movies, okay? So one of them, if you recall, Hugh, is Clear and Present Danger. How many of you guys seen that Harrison Ford movie? Yeah, what a great actor. One of the best of all time, arguably, of course. But with Clear and Present Danger, it's not whether or not it's black and white, but gray. No, that's something totally different that I was thinking. But in there, if you recall, the dude from Colombia, that all they had was a picture of the guy. and the picture was kind of like your blank Facebook profile. All he was wearing was like a robe over his head. You couldn't see his face, and it was a blank picture. But if you recall, he called the president's secretary, and it went to the voicemail or the answering machine back then, and the answering machine fires up, and he says, "The machine's on, Maura." Maura, what was the girl's name? You guys remember? Something like that. Machine's on, turn it off. And that little 6-second clip that he was able, or that they were able to capture after he went on to later murder the girl, they were able to pull that, and then over all of the legal Patriot Act wiretapping. Oh wait, Patriot Act wasn't invented back then. All the wiretaps that were going on, they were able to take that voice pattern and match it to unknown callers' voice patterns from the past, which in TV land, anytime you see biometric matches, whether it's voice, finger, facial, or butt scans, anything and everything, it seems like those programs are so fast that you say, hey, I got to get me some of that cyber right there. But there ain't no way that any of those programs could be that fast. And the reason is because of what it says right here on the page 798 or 748 in your book. Fingerprint systems store the full fingerprint, which is actually a lot of information and takes up a massive amount of hard drive space and resources. So if you were to just try to correlate based off of that large image, then you would be in trouble. So with fingerprints, I think there's something like 27 points on a given fingerprint that will allow a FIPS certified fingerprint scanner to go ahead and match the 27 points on a person's finger to make sure that it can triangulate and very quickly be able to go ahead and match it to make sure that it matches what we call a one-to-one verification. Or in layman's terms, a match, right? So what comes into play here is a few different things. And I learned this whenever I was working out at the Marshall Space Flight Center. We had an agency-wide identity management project, and we integrated the identity management project with our Linnell interface for access control systems, but also had a biometric component that we would send people into the badging office, and in the badging office, they would enroll, is what we called the process. So they would come into the badging office and meet with the badging technician, and when they did, they would come into the room, the person would sit down in the chair, and the badging technician would take their picture. It was about 6 feet away from the person, and it was deliberately that far. The person would zoom in on a head scan, and you were told not to smile. Why do you think you were told not to smile? Yeah, when you smile, there's like 50 some odd muscles in your face that cause your face to look a different way. Whereas if you do not smile, you just have a flat mouth whenever you're getting a picture taken, it's easier to take that and match it to facial geometry rather than a smile, which gives different curvatures on the face, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to find it. So we would take the picture, and then the person, instead of actually getting the booking, where you would, back in the olden days and, all the old movies, we would see people coming in with the big ink on their fingers and doing the slaps. Kind of like Rambo, remember they were trying real hard to put him down. He's giving all sorts of crazy elbows out to people, right? You remember Rambo, right? Well, now it's the slaps. You just put your finger on the scanner, and you can see it immediately. And then it's the rolls. Now you do the roll, which is you roll it across the scanner, and it actually will flatten from the curvature, kind of like a Mercator map, if you're familiar with geography. Instead of having the curvatures of the Earth, it actually unfolds it to make the curvatures more flat. Same thing with the hand or the fingerprint geometry. It'll actually go and flatten it out on the fly, which is a pretty cool technology. The scan actually shows the ridges on your finger, and it will do a light and dark contrast and give an image of it back to the rendering on the software. So you mentioned something right there, and you hit the nail on the head. So we would do slaps, we would do rolls, not like slap. It would be more of a slap is straight on there, and a roll would be a roll. And then what we would do is we would take two forms of I-9 documentation. Everybody familiar with I-9 documentation? We would scan those in. So somebody's driver's license would be Form A. There was a bunch of other valid Form A type of I-9 documentation. And then a valid Form B type of I-9 documentation, like a passport. Or you could not use your existing badge that was issued by the federal government. It had to be something else besides that agency's badge. So it was kind of neat the way that it was worked. We would have people come in, photo, fingerprints, I-9 documentations for authentication, and then we would actually get their signature. They would consent to allowing us to take this information and sign it, and booyah. In a perfect world, that is how the process worked. Well, if you've ever developed any software or been on projects where you need to get 86,000 people to move into a funnel at 16 different centers, it's kind of like a tractor pull, where you come out hog wild, going as fast as you can. The front is, and then the weight starts to go down in the back, and then you see the finish line right there, and it's like, and you just start spinning out. Well, the same sort of thing happened with this project right here. We came out after 9 months of integrating systems and doing R&D and getting everything that I just told you to work. And immediately we showed the demo to management. And once we showed the demo and said, yeah, we this is where we're at, and they said, put it in production. And we said, what do you mean put it in production? We're at least 3-4 months away. We can't wait that long. Let's put it in production. We'll get the kinks worked out while we're on the fly here. So we put it in production after about 10 months. And on within the first 2 or 3 weeks, there were 750 change requests and trouble tickets that came in for it. And I tell you that because what that used to mean to me, so what that meant to me is, before when I first got into business, I used to hate change request systems and trouble tickets, because then that meant that somebody had a problem with something or a problem report, But somebody said to me that what that means is job security. Each one of those has to have an action plan. There has to be an approval of hours for work for each one of those change requests, and it's a software upgrade. So I looked at it that way, and I was just like, wow, that's a big cash cow right there. Yeah, whoa, holy cow. So what we did is we took it for what it was worth. Well, of those 750, what we found is that our little perfect scenario there was not going to work. People would come in and enroll, and we would do a one-to-one verification right then and there, and then they would go and do some yard work or do something else where they came back in a week, and now, you can't really see that on the fingerprint right here, now on the fingerprint, you got a cut on the finger. So what could we not do when they came back in? We couldn't verify it. So their biometric didn't match, their current biometric did not match what's on file. We just got the card printed. Okay, we gotta wait for you to heal, or, oh shoot, the software doesn't do that. Okay, let's put in a CR for that. That's one of the tractor pull scenarios that I was talking about right there, right? Well, what we also found is on this next page right here. We talked a little bit about this earlier, the type 1, type 2, and the CER. You'll see of these right here, this last page, this one right here, you'll see probably the retina scan and either keyboard or dynamics or voice dynamics on the test. But you'll definitely see a question about this right here as well whenever it comes to biometrics. It'll be one of these three on your exam, okay? So what we found is that I used to play basketball at lunchtime because my office was right down the street from the gym, and that was about 20 pounds ago, where I would be able to go out there and run at lunchtime and get my exercise on and then come back. Well, what we found is that after people would exercise, or if their heart was beating really fast, or if they had perspiration on, like you said, the oil, they had perspiration on their fingerprints, that the reader would falsely reject them. So in this particular case, the type 1 error would happen. And what the vendor, or the multiple vendors that we had that we were doing the R&D on, what multiple vendors said is that if your hand is wet, or if you have like sweaty palms, or you're sweating, then what you do is you run it through your hair and get the oil from your hair on your fingerprints, and then it'll read it. And every time we would do that, it would work. It would work. But also, what we found is not just from the sweat, but also with the heartbeat, that would also directly correlate to having a false rejection rate. And I say this more of a antithesis, not necessarily with a flair towards exercise, but on the contrary of that. Smokers would go outside, puff down a cigarette in 2 minutes, come back in, buzzing like a bumblebee, heartbeat would be a little bit slower, they'd put their fingerprint or finger on their fingerprint right there, and it would falsely reject them because it could not get a pulse off of them, right? And what we found was a number of different things that mostly were the false rejection rates, but also we found that, hey, our little perfect world that we had, where everybody comes in, everything works, was not always going to work in our favor. So while you're going through and developing software, what do you do if somebody's missing a finger? What do you do if they're missing an arm? All right? Well, we got to put in a CR for that to get that approved. And of the 86,000 people, we're able to bring in 76,000 people, no problem. But then that last 10,000 people, it took about 8 or 9 months to get all those people through the gate to finally issue them a new personal identification verification badge. So it was just a wonderful project to work on. And what we did is we tightly coupled access control via the Directory Information Server, our LDAP environment, to authentication services and the PIV cards, the CAC cards for NASA. And that is the state of the art that is best practice in the industry now.